We made a Blackberry Jam Mead, and we used actual blackberry jam, not just blackberries. In this video, we're gonna walk you through every step of the way and how we made this, all the way through to a tasting. Let's get started. We're gonna make a mead. What is mead? Mead is honey wine. It means it's fermented honey, okay? If you make it with anything but honey, it's probably not mead, but you can add stuff to it. So today we're gonna add stuff to it. But let's start out with our fermenter. This is our lovely brand new fermenter, 1.3 gallons, I think it is, something like that, 5 liters.
Number. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can get your own. We have links in the description below. It does not come with a lid. You got to use cheesecloth over the top, but that works really well too. First ingredient, since it's a mead, we need honey. Happen to have 2 partial containers of wildflower honey. This came from Costco, so if you have a Costco, Kirkland brand is actually pretty decent honey.
We selected wildflower because we thought the flavors and aromas of the floral essence from the wildflower honey would pair lovely with the black.
I'm wafting
jam.
it towards
Yes,
her. Yeah.
doing a great job. It's a beautiful waft.
It just really does smell lovely. So 2 pounds of wildflower honey. Why 2 pounds? Because I know how much sugar is in the blackberry jam and I don't want to overdo it. This is going to come out somewhere in like the 13 to 14% range, just so you're aware. So this is no wimpy mead. Not that there's anything wrong with lower ABV mead, just had to say it. Okay, and now I didn't use both. And this one still has a little bit left in it. But you know what? If you have a bunch of these jars laying around with just a little bit in them, we actually did a video where we just took whatever honey we happen to have in little containers and made a mead from it. And it actually came out amazing. So we'll put a link to that too. All right, so we're done with the scale now. By the way, if you don't have a scale, I highly recommend getting one. They really make life so much easier. That's not even my favorite scale.
I know, we don't like this one, but it
works.
It's
it
a
does
heavier
the job.
thing, so you know.
Okay, now let's talk about the blackberry jam, shall we? We've done strawberry jam wine. We never did it with a mead, but this is Blackberry Preserves, so yeah, I know it's technically not a jam, but whatever. Blackberry Jam Mead sounds so much better than Blackberry Preserves Mead. So that's why we're going with that. If you look at the back, you can see the ingredients. This one is organic sugar, organic blackberries, pectin, and citric acid. Those last 2 ingredients are pretty important. Pectin is what makes it gel, okay? So we have to work on that. Well, we have a solution for that one. And citric acid, that might make this too acidic, because honey is acidic and so is citric acid, obviously, because it's an acid. So we might have to work with that too. But the other important thing to look at is how many servings and how much sugar per serving. 18 servings, 12 grams of sugar per serving. I figured it out. These two come to just about 1 pound of sugars, which is great because I already have 2 pounds of honey in there. So, you know, so we're looking at like a 1.115 or roughly that original gravity. If you don't know what original gravity is, we have videos on that too, but it's basically, it gives us an idea of the alcohol potential of our mead. So let's start getting this in there. And it doesn't really pour.
It's thick.
Yeah. So I need something to get this out. Now, before I use this spoon, it has to be sanitized. But I also want to point out, everything that we're using here has been sanitized in
The red bucket sanitization!
which is literally just a big bucket, about 15 gallons, that holds Star San sanitizer and water mixed to the manufacturer's suggestions. And we just dunk things in it and it's, you know, sanitized. We have a video on that too. Okay, with a sanitized spoon, I'm just gonna start scooping this out. This may take a little while. I'm gonna do both jars. See in a few. That is very good Blackberry Preserves. That's one of the advantages of being a home brewer. You get to lick the spoon. So what Derek is doing now is she's just putting a little water in them, shaking it up, get every last little bit out. I mean, you paid for those preserves. Those are your preserves. You deserve to have all that extra flavor in your mead. Okay, next. We gotta start mixing some of this together. So can we pour some water in here? We have 96 ounces of water in total. Just gonna use a good portion of it right now. And it's okay to be a little sloppy. You don't wanna make a mess, but you don't mind getting some air into it at this point. You do want to mix it up thoroughly so you can get an accurate reading on gravity. Try not to splash everyone in the premises though. This may take a little longer to mix than usual because that jam does not want to break up at all.
The pectin is doing its job.
Oh yeah. You know what? While we're at this, let me actually tell you what we're going to do to solve the pectin problem. I have here pectic enzyme. Now, pectic enzyme breaks up pectin, okay? So that's literally what it's made to do. In some cases with whole fruits, you can get a little tiny bit more sugars out of it too by using pectic enzyme. In this case, it's really to help break up that pectin, not immediately, but over time, so that we don't have what's called a pectic haze at the end. And it should help to clear the brew. Half teaspoon per gallon. Now, I'd like to point one thing out too. If you don't get it all broken up, it just means your first reading won't be accurate, but the yeast will still get to the sugars. They will still take care of it. They will still convert it to alcohol. We've actually done a video on that too. I'm sorry that I'm saying that so many times today, but it's just interesting. All these little topics that we've done videos on. I never really thought of it. 6 years.
So there's going to be some information out there for you.
I have no idea if I'm going to be able to mix this up thoroughly. Probably not. Every once in a while, we like to do things that make it a little bit more difficult so that we can show you the trials and tribulations of a homebrewer. This is not one of those times, but it's okay. Here's the thing. You know, to me, being a homebrewer means being able to figure things out for yourself. So if we sat here and just said, okay, add X, Y, Z, mix together, throw it on the shelf for 3 weeks, at that point, it's done. Did we really teach anything? So I'd much rather show you all the stuff that can go wrong and ways to fix it, ways to get around it, ways to work with it. I'd love to say that this was intentional, but it really wasn't.
Would a whisk?
Maybe a whisk might be useful. Let me go grab a whisk. Again, needs to go into the Star San sanitizer. Okay, let's also put some more water in, just to about here or so.
Up there?
Yeah. One of the advantages of a wide mouth container. And stop right about there. This might break it up some more. I don't know if it's truly going to mix at this point. It's okay, you know, it's good entertainment, right? It really doesn't look very appetizing at this point. I will be totally honest.
Kind of a brownish hue.
It looks like we're making swamp water. I think the whisk was a fine idea, though. It does seem to be breaking it up a little bit better.
I don't think we're going to get it all.
We're not going to get it all mixed in now. I'm going to have to estimate our gravity, and I may actually put in a little bit more water to help it just a touch if it's not going to break up. So we'll be approximating our final ABV, but that's okay.
Nope.
Oh, come on. Really? That was not intentional. All right. So what we want to do now is let's just put the rest of the water in, mix it through, move forward.
Which one do you want? This one, that one? What do you want?
What do you mean?
For mixing.
Oh, I'll mix with this guy.
Okay.
It's easier. Okay, so we added our 96 ounces of water, and thankfully we're using a fermenter that's a little bit bigger than 1 gallon, so there's a little bit of room here. In primary, headspace is totally fine because all that's going to happen is it's going to produce a lot of gas and fill up that space anyway, so you're not going to have to worry about oxygenation at all in primary. All right, that's as good as I can do. I am going to take a gravity reading anyway.
Okay, we also need to take a pH reading.
Yeah, let's do the pH reading first.
Okay.
Okay. The reason we're doing the pH reading is, remember that citric acid that I said was in there? Well, you know, depending on how much they put in, sometimes it's very little, sometimes they put in enough that it does actually have a problem. We're going to make sure that we don't have a problem.
And what we mean by a problem is that there is a range that yeast like to live in order to produce and be fruitful and do their thing, right? So we want to make sure that our pH is within that range. We also know that the fermentation process itself is an acidifying process. So over the process of fermenting, the acidity is going to go up.
We are greenish. We're over 4, at least 4.
Okay.
Maybe a little higher. Well, slightly under 4. No, it's so hard to say, you know. I'm going to let it sit for a minute. It looks like it should be around 4, which means we're probably fine. Generally speaking, we shoot for like a 4 to 5.5 pH. We find that actually tends to work best. Parts of that are very, very green. Parts of it are not. That's what's confusing me, but I'm going to go with it. By the way, if you're curious why we use pH strips instead of a meter, because, you know, they're just easy.
They're convenient.
They work really, really well. We just know, is it in the right range? Is it not in the right range? Right now, this is mostly in the right range. So we're going to go with that, all right? It's okay. See, It's always the way it is with homebrew. You know, everything's a little bit of a compromise and kind of a, all right, it seems like it should be fine. We're going to go with that. I'll use the baster to get that little bit of jam off the side that's bothering you.
Thank you.
So now I want to get a gravity reading. This is probably not going to be even close to accurate, but you never know. Maybe some of that dissolved while we were sitting here talking. I don't know. I doubt it. Lovely color so far. Yeah, I don't think all of it dissolved. It's sitting at 1.092 right now. I'm not going to write that down. I'm going to write down an approximate instead, because I know we used the equivalent of about a quart of honey and jam. We used 96 ounces of water, almost like we planned it that way. We have pretty much a full gallon here, okay? So using the calculator that teacher said I would never have handy, I'm going to figure out what our starting gravity should be. To calculate our starting gravity, this is an estimation, but it should be pretty close. We know it's about 0.035 per pound of honey. So 0.035 times 2 pounds of honey, right? So we're at 0.07. And then we added about a pound of sugar. So I'm going to call it a pound, close to a pound. That's 0.045 per pound in a gallon. So plus 0.045 gives us 1.115. Now, I know, it actually only gave me 0.115. But the reason why it's 1.115 is because we started with water. Water is totally neutral at 1.000. So 1 plus 0.115 is 1.115. And that's our approximate starting gravity. In case you were curious, that starting gravity, if it went dry, could give us about 15.5% alcohol, which is kind of up there for a mead. But hey, you know, we're going to go with it.
But the fermentable sugars are only part of the equation when it comes to what your final gravity would be. The second part of that equation is
yeast. And today we're going to be going with Lalvin 71B, also known as the Beast. Why do we call it that? Because, well, this yeast is like the best performer we've got, all right?
For us.
Exactly.
In this particular area.
It's supposed to be like a 14 or so percent. We've had it go to 16 and 17%. And here's the thing. If this actually ends up a little bit sweet in the end, I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me because we're probably going to end up sweetening it anyway.
Yeah.
Now, we normally like to aim for dry, but I'll be totally honest. I wasn't thinking when I was adding all that sugar. I thought, oh, that's going to be the same as another pound of honey. See? Yeah, everybody makes mistakes. I'm admitting my mistake to you right now. I was hoping for this to be a little bit lower gravity than it actually is, but it's all right. We will deal with it and figure it out. But because of that, I was only going to use a half packet of yeast, but yeah, I'm going to use the whole packet. Now, you might think that's wasteful, and to some extent it is, because this whole packet can do up to 5 gallons, okay? I like to say use half a packet for up to 3 gallons and a whole packet for beyond that. But when I have a must that might be a little bit more complex for it to work on, I'm going to use the whole packet to give it a little bit more of a head start.
The reason being, you don't know what ratio is live to dead yeast within that packet. Both are equally important because those dead yeasts kind of work as a nutrient for the live yeasts. Yeast
they eat each other.
Are cannibals. Are you ready for the cheesecloth liner?
I am ready for the cheese. Yeah, there's yeast dust.
All right, so we did sanitize this, and I wrung it out, and I let it just sit on the edge so I wouldn't be constantly dripping sanitizer liquid in here, but it is still very moist.
Yes, and this is the cheesecloth that comes with this fermenter. I guess we double this, huh?
There's a little indent, so it fits nice and snug.
No airlock on this guy.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We're going a little rustic. You know, we're using jam, preserves, whatever.
Now, the cheesecloth is multiple layers. I think there's 4.
There's like 4 now.
4 layers.
So nothing's getting in there.
And the way it's designed, there is an indent for the rubber band to fit in there. So it is going to help protect things climbing up the side and going in. They're going to have difficulty doing that.
It's totally safe. It's fine. This is the way it was done for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's okay. I'm not saying that everything that was done for hundreds of years is the best way to go, but in this case, there's no harm done. I prefer the airlock myself because that way you can watch it go bloop, 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 bloop. I mean, that's kind of fun, you know, and it's an overall indication. But on this one, you just watch the sides, look for bubbles. It's okay. It'll still work.
All All right, so we have our preliminary mixture ready here to start fermenting. Everything is good. We took our pH, we took our gravity, we guesstimated because, you know, things
Close
happen.
enough.
And now it's just going to sit. And by sit, I mean we're just going to leave it alone and let it ferment. We should start to see bubbles come up the side. We should start to see some foam creating on the top. We should start to see maybe even some of the yeast particles floating about.
Lava
maybe
lamp.
part of those jam particles floating around in there. That is normal. That is completely fine. What we don't want to see is anything fuzzy.
Yeah.
Foam is okay. Fuzzy is not okay.
And if it looks at you and follows you as you move, that's a bad thing. But this will probably take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to fully ferment out. And at that point, we'll be back to show you what it looks like then. Okay, it's been almost a month, 1 day short of a month. So I'm assuming this is probably finished. We're gonna find out though. We normally do the 2 reading kind of deal, but I don't know, we might end up moving that up a little. Giving it a smell, nothing rank. Yeah, there's no eyeballs looking at me or anything like that, you know, it's,
It's a glowing review.
yeah. I'm gonna call it done, 0.998. Before we move forward, let me do something. I'm going to grab the calculator teacher said I would never have, that I now have a stand for it right there. And we're gonna calculate our approximate ABV because we were 1.115 approximate before because of all the jam and stuff. So 1.115 minus 0.998 gives us 117 points used up times 135 is 15.8%.
Dang.
So what that tells me, since we used Lalvin 71B, we're probably at or just about at the tolerance of that yeast, which is a good thing for what's going to happen next. I normally would want to let this sit, take another reading in a week, but it's at 0.998. I mean, it's done.
Yeah.
So we're going to rack this to a new fermenter and move forward with the next part of this. So we have our auto siphon. We have a larger container. This is a 1.3 gallon. This is a 1.3 gallon for reasons to be shown soon. But first, we have the sample to go in and just a little teeny tiny taste. That is not half bad.
Cool.
I think that has potential. It's got a nice tartness from the fruit. Yeah, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, just gonna go part way in, get our siphon going here. The cap is still on because there's goop in the bottom of this, also known as lees, that we don't really want in our final beverage. And we're just gonna let it run. Be back in a minute. We've racked it, and there's a little bit more headroom than I might like, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Something I want to talk about. We have more of the Blackberry Preserves. We're sitting at 0.998. I know that if I add this, it gives me about 21 points of gravity per jar. So if we add it to this, puts us at about a 1.020, assuming no more fermentation happens, which is probably a pretty good spot. But if fermentation occurs again, I have another jar. So we're probably just gonna put in the 1, mix that up, and let it sit and see what happens. To get it all out, I'm gonna use the spoon side of the spattle. That's right, it's a spoon, it's a paddle, it's both. Links in the description. I love this thing. I think it's the best invention ever. Okay, I just have to be kind of careful though, so I don't.
You're gonna gloop.
I'm gonna gloop. I don't think I can do anything about it. There's still a lot of CO2 in here.
Now, if you were sure on your volumes, you could have pre-dumped the jam in the bottom when you didn't have liquid to splash everywhere.
That probably would have been the smart thing to do.
And then added your liquid, but we didn't do that.
We never do anything the smart way. Don't do it the way we did. Put your jam in first. But you know what? There's like almost nothing in the jar.
Yeah, it came out clean.
All right.
There's a little on the jar. You got a little something.
Now I got to mix this in. Do I really have to mix it in though? No.
Yeah.
Except that we don't want it to ferment. If we wanted it to ferment, then I don't have to mix it in. But because we don't want it to ferment, I probably should because it'll just end up being jelly on the bottom of the meat.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do want to mix it in. See, it was a trick question.
Is your spoon part clean?
It's clean enough.
Then you might want to switch
I'm
to
gonna use
the
the
paddle.
paddle side.
See?
That's why that thing is both. The spattle. I love it. We made up that name, by the way.
And by we mean Ryan.
I had a couple other names. Some of them, when I first said it, I was like, oh, no, we can't say that.
Nope.
If anyone gets that reference, just say, I got it. You don't have to say the word because it'll get blocked on YouTube. This may take a few minutes. As I sat here mixing this for what seemed like days, Derica said, do we need to add more pectic enzyme? Because that's kind of what's holding it all together. It's not really dissolving. I mean, there's big chunks in here still. So
Those of you who do not make your own preserves, jams, or jellies may not know that pectin is added, particularly to low pectin fruit, to help it gel.
yeah, and it's the gelling that's causing problem.
We got a problem.
And it might not clear well. So I know we did add half a teaspoon before. You can have a full teaspoon in a gallon. So I'm just going to add another half teaspoon to help that break up a bit more and to help it clear.
And some people mistakenly call pectic enzyme pectic or pectin, and that's actually the opposite of what it is.
Pectin is what it breaks up. Okay.
So we're just going to
stir
hope
this forever.
that the pectic enzyme does its job and breaks down the remainder glumps of
there's
preserves, because it's just really annoying.
Yeah, I'm just going to... I give up. Put the lid on it.
Ooh.
Careful. Okay, so we're going to take some notes, put this in the ferment station, and we're going to keep an eye on it, see if it actually continues fermentation, and we'll be back to give you an update. This is really bothering me. See how much space we have here? That is too much headspace. We are going to rack this into a regular standard 1 gallon wide mouth. Plus, I need this fermenter for this one. All right, it's been 2 weeks, and well, you know what? I think it's been sitting on that preserves long enough, so let's just get the lid off and rack it to a pitcher and move forward.
We're racking it to a pitcher because we're uncertain what our final volume will be, and that will help us better determine what size vessel to let it continue sitting in.
That way we have the least amount of headspace, that sort of thing. And as always, when we rack, we are using an auto siphon. I'm leaving the cap on because there's some goop in the bottom there, you know, all those preserves that we put in. And we're gonna rack to a pitcher. As long as your source is higher than your destination, all should work well. Okay, so we ended up with 3,200 milliliters, which is somewhere around like 100 something ounces, like 102, 104 ounces, something like that. And I know that because our pitcher has both on it, but only the liters actually matters to me right now because I'm trying to figure out the right vessel to put this in so that we have the least amount of headspace. I happen to have a Carlo Rossi 3-liter bottle. Now I also know that if there's 0.2 liters left over, that's probably not going to be an issue. But we do want to rack it from here into this and have as little headspace as possible. So we're going to rack it over again and we'll be right back. All right, so we racked it. It's super low in the...
There's like no headspace.
Like that much headspace. Anyway, and I'm going to put a rubber band on this because, okay, this is a Carlo Rossi jug. It was not really meant to be a fermenter. We're just using it as one. And the airlocks just, you know, the bungs don't fit in there really well. So it is what it is. Now I got to take notes. So what are we going to do with this now?
I'm gonna let it sit.
It's going back in the ferment station for at least another week. Maybe let it clear out a little bit more. It was actually nicely clear. I did rouse up a little bit of the lees in the bottom trying to get as much product as I could. Good thing I didn't get another teaspoon of product or else we wouldn't have been able to use this jug. But that's about ideal for the situation. But the headspace thing, don't worry about it too much. If it was down in here, it's still totally fine. It's all good. We just like to try to match the size to what we have, and it also frees up some of the other fermenters for other things. Anyway, see you in a week or two. It's been another week. This is clearing out. It's time to rack it. Auto siphon in. This is going to be interesting because there's not a lot of space here. That's the trick. Pump it as you're going. Look at that. There's a moment right there. It worked though, didn't it?
It did. It totally worked.
And it didn't oxygenate or anything.
No.
Okay, for those of you that don't understand, normally you would put the auto siphon in like halfway and start it up. The liquid was to like here.
So the displacement of simply putting the autosiphon in there would have erupted liquid everywhere.
I like to be different, you know? We are racking to a pitcher because we don't know if this is going to need adjustments. And if it does, It's much easier to do adjustments and mix stuff into a pitcher than it is into a fermenter. So, couple things. First, this is not totally clear, and I'm aware of that. Second, we're going to let this bulk age for a while, but I want to make sure that it's at the point where we want it, meaning sweetness levels, if we need to add acidity, if we need to add tannins, we want to do that now. So,
And the only way we can know that is by taking a taste.
which means we need a glass for that. I'm going to use this little teeny tiny tasting glass, which comes from North Mountain Supply. You can get them in the link in the description below. Actually, it's not unclear. It just, I think the picture makes it look worse. Now, this was sitting at 0.998, but then we added 12 ounces more of the preserves to this, and more pectic enzyme. So all that stuff was in there. I don't know if it re-fermented, and we're not going to worry about it because it's just not that important.
So it's 15-ish.
It might be a little higher than 15.
15%.
15.8 is my calculation, plus the Blackberry Preserves, which, if I go by what they say on here, 18 servings at 12 grams each. Alexa, what's 18 times 12?
18 times 12 is 216.
It's got almost half a pound of sugars, which would add like 20 points of gravity to this. That does not taste like 1.020 to me. It tastes more like 1.010, which I can take a reading on it and find out for sure, and I probably should do that. We won't know for sure if any more of it fermented, though. That's the key. We won't know, and that's okay. This is at least 16%, though, so that's pretty significant. I was a little bit off. It's actually 1.012, not 1.010. So it did actually ferment some of those sugars from...
Do you want to take a note for that?
Yeah. So it did ferment some of the blackberries. We don't really know how much. So I'm going to guess that this is probably, we're going to call it 16% and call it a day. Does anyone really care if it's 16 or 17%? And if they do, don't give them any more. But I want to pour this back in.
So I'm getting sweetness up front, but then it goes away.
It's very tart. The blackberry flavor is there. The honey flavor is there. But I think it needs sweetness. It needs to be sweeter.
I almost want to add vanilla to it or oak it.
I don't know that I really want to do either.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
I mean, oaking maybe, but I'd like to add more sweetness first.
All right. Let's do that.
Can I make it sweeter?
Make it sweeter.
I'm gonna make it sweeter. And to do that, we're just gonna add more of the Kirkland Wildflower honey. I'm not gonna go with a lot, mostly because, well, there's not a lot in here. Oh, I'm not using this one. I'm gonna get another container. Patience is a virtue, and I'm not very virtuous. Just gonna dump some in. And a lot of people don't understand our system of sweetening. Let me explain. What we do is we add sweetener to taste, okay? So I'm gonna mix that honey in now, and then we're gonna taste it. When it's at the taste that we like, then I'll take a reading and tell you how much we added. Because we don't even have a full gallon here. So if I say, oh, add a pound for this gallon, that's not the same thing. It wouldn't work out the same. Unless you have the exact volume that we have. Adding a certain amount doesn't matter. But sweetening to a certain specific gravity is universal. You can do that with any volume that you happen to have. So I find that that's a much better way to go. Plus, that way if you sweeten the same way we do, knowing, okay, I'm kind of aiming for this, but hey, I like it now before I even get there. Or, wow, I got to where you guys got it to, and it wasn't my favorite. I still needed more. Totally fine. This is your mead, not our mead. We're just giving you a recipe to start with.
The technique is more important than the final numbers.
Exactly. You just want to mix this thoroughly through, make sure there's no...
Residual.
Yeah, I see some residual on the spattle. That's just out of context, People call us a wholesome family show. I don't know. The innuendo. There's a lot. There's a lot of honey on the spattle. It's not a euphemism. Now, the trick to the mixing, though, is you do not want to aerate as you're doing it. That's why I'm just kind of keeping it moving, but I'm not really adding oxygen to it. I think that's pretty good. Okay, I didn't add a lot. Maybe a few points to the gravity, because Derica didn't seem too keen on making it much sweeter.
I was getting sweetness up front, but then it was the end that I wasn't as appreciative of.
Ooh, that brought the blackberry out. That little bit of sweetness brought the blackberry. What do you think? I don't think this needs to be oaked. I understand why you're going there, but I'm not sure that oaking would.
Nope, I'm fine with it now.
Okay. Does it need anything?
I'm getting the brightness, the little tingly. I think it's tannic enough. I think
Let me just
much
take
more
another taste.
tannins would maybe be too puckery.
It's got a nice acidity.
Yep.
It's got some mouth drying aspect to it, so the tannins are pretty good. There's a honey note there that's really nice. And then there's the blackberry coming through. Here, have the rest of that. I'm just going to take one last reading to show you how much honey we actually added. That was pretty simple. Usually we add a lot more. It's still nice and crisp. It's not cloying. It was a little off. I added 8 points, 1.020. At this point, we have something crucial to understand. Normally, I would say this needs to be pasteurized. And here's why. Normally, if something goes dry and you sweeten it, you have the chance of re-fermentation occurring. However, a couple things here. First, we know this is at least 16% ABV. Lalvin 71B pretty much kicks out around 15 to 16%. Second, it was 1.012 today when we went to check it the first time. We added enough for it to be higher than that, so it did ferment some and stopped. Now, that's not to be confused with a stall. It didn't stall at all. It did exactly what the yeast was made to do.
Done.
The yeast are finished. They have reached the tolerance that they can handle, and they've stopped fermenting. This has got to be somewhere in the 16.5% range, I'm going to say. Because of that, we don't actually have to pasteurize this.
All right.
Which is kind of neat. It's cool to not have to do that. But it's important to note the difference between finished and a stall. If we had used, say, a turbo yeast or something that can go to 22 or 24%, or even EC1118 or K1V1118, K1V1116, or Mango Jack's MO5 that can go to 18%, we have a risk that it is a stall and it could ferment, in which case pasteurization, boom, done. Don't have to worry about it. It's totally safe. But here's the other thing. This is going to go into bulk aging. So even if it did ferment a little bit more from here, it's not a problem because it's going to be sitting under airlock. That's crucial. Always, 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 always be safe about that kind of thing. So we're going to rack this back into a fermenter, put it under airlock, stick it in the fermentation, and we'll see in a week or two when we feel it's ready to taste. It's been another week. Time to give this a taste. It's pretty clear, actually. The clarity on this is nice. I give it like a 9.5 for clarity.
It's got that peachy, ready.
Yeah, the color's odd. I expected like more black, dark reds, that kind of thing.
It's kind of an ambery red.
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad. It's pretty. It's a nice color. Ooh. Wow, that smell. That's got some serious honey factor going for it.
Yeah, it's like almost...
And berry. I smell lots of berry.
The combination...
Honeyberry.
Almost... My brain's being weird, but it almost smells smoked.
Really?
So I said my brain's being weird.
You get that from dried berries a lot. I'm not really getting it on this one.
It's just Derica brain weirdness.
This one's actually pretty simple. It was just honey, some Blackberry Preserves, Pectic Enzyme, and yeast. That's about it. Now, something to remember. This is 15.8%, and we sweetened it to 1.020. So it's like a medium sweet. Some people might consider this very sweet. In this case, there's enough acidity and tartness from those berries that it's not coming across super sweet, okay? It all just kind of blends together really nicely.
Yeah.
Nice fruity flavor.
It's definitely, I'm getting the honey notes up front, and then I'm getting the cleansing tartness and the back end of things.
Yeah. But it's got a nice fruity flavor, good honey character coming through. The sweetness level is just right. There is plenty of tartness and acidity, and even tannins coming through. Got like a mouth-filling feeling. Really, really nice. This is great.
Did we add tannins to this, or is this just
No, that's just from the Blackberry Preserves.
It's crazy.
Yep. Well, you know, preserves just have everything mashed in there, so it's possible. We did actually pectic enzyme this twice to get it to clear, so that does explain the clarity. It's still not like absolutely clear, but it's pretty darn close. I don't have a problem with this level of clarity. We used a wildflower honey, the Costco wildflower. I want to say I'm getting some floral notes that I didn't expect. And I think when you sweeten with honey like that, you're going to get more of those floral notes, which is kind of the idea.
Right, and that pairs well with berries. So
Yeah. So what we're going to do with this, just so you're aware, is this is going to sit in the ferment station for probably another few weeks, maybe even a couple months, and then we will rack it again and we will bottle it. We tend to do those off camera because it's just like one day we do 5 or 6 or 7 brews all at the same time. We've done a couple of bottling videos. We even did a behind the scenes brew day video that way, or bottling day.
chaos bottling.
Yeah. We did that. And one of those bottles will go away for a year. So a year from right around this time, we'll do another tasting to give you an idea of what it's done in a year. But for right now, we need to put a repeatability score on this. They just go 1 through 10. How easy is it for someone to remake this?
So I'm going to knock it down a few pegs simply because fermenting with the goopy mess that was preserves was kind of
Yeah.
annoying.
A little disappointing too. The quantity is low.
Yeah. So that may frustrate a person trying to replicate this.
If you're brand new at brewing, this might not be the first one you want to make. Plus,
And-
we did have to Pectic Enzyme it twice.
Yeah. I don't really feel like that added complexity to the process. It was just something unusual that could frustrate someone.
Yeah, a little frustration. I'm going to say it's like a solid 7 to 8, though.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard. I mean, if this is your first brew, you might not want to try it as your first, but it could be your third. You know, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, now on to our scoring system, which goes 1 through 10 with the occasional 11. Below a 5 basically means it sucks. From 5 to 11 means it's good to great or awesome. I had to simplify it. It was getting way too long. But we could probably even just say below 3 sucks at this point, really, you know. But we don't
But
give.
this isn't there.
No.
Spoilers
This is way above that.
for that.
So for this, it doesn't even matter.
Do you have a number?
I think I do. All right, I have a number.
All right.
Do you have a number?
Sure.
1, 2, 3, 9.
8.5.
Wow. So why'd you go 8.5?
I really like blackberries.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want this to have more blackberry flavor.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in theory, we could put more jam into it and let it sit. The problem is now it's going to just add more sugars too, and that is why we didn't do that.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why we used blackberry jam was because it was encrusted. Another reason I think was because,
Blackberries are harder for us to get this year.
yeah, we don't live in blackberry country.
Yeah, they're just very expensive. The amount of blackberries that we would have needed to make this would have cost too much to make it a viable recipe. I don't like to make recipes that are expensive just to say, oh, I spent this much money making
Right,
this, because
right.
we want to make recipes that are approachable and ezy for people to do.
Now, if you were lucky enough to live in said blackberry
yeah.
country, which is basically anywhere north of
Anywhere
us,
north of Florida. Yeah.
then you could go pick some,
Right.
and then that would
Well,
be
it would be
awesome.
a different recipe, though. You wouldn't be doing exactly the same thing.
I'm not saying it would be the same recipe.
Oh, right.
I'm saying that if you follow, say, our strawberry
Yeah, the strawberry wine. That would work. It'd be
this is a mead, so it'd still be different.
similar,
Anyway,
but not the same. Yeah.
we'll get our hands on blackberries someday.
But we used 3 jars of blackberry jam, which I think they were like $5 each. So it was like $15 plus the honey to make this, which still puts it a little pricey because it is a mead. It's 2 pounds of honey. So that's still a little pricey for like 3 bottles that we're going to get, maybe 3.5 bottles that we're going to get out of it. But I think this one actually came out really nice. Had we used actual blackberries from the store, it would have probably cost twice that much to make. So that's why we didn't do it that way. Plus, you know, it's always fun to say, oh, we made it with blackberry jam, you know. But we did use Pectic Enzyme to get it to clear. And I think that was a smart choice this time.
yes, I agree.
You don't have to, but you'll get a much murkier brew if you don't. I don't know that it would change the flavor much, though.
Probably not.
I really like this. The only thing that might make it better is some age at this point, and that's why I can't really go much higher. I mean, a 9 is still an amazing score.
Absolutely.
We're getting a little tougher on our scores now. You know, leaving a little room just in case they grow.
I mean, 8.5 isn't shabby.
Oh yeah,
any
I mean this
either.
is a super high score
Yeah.
here. This is great. I would drink this as is right now, any day. Love it. Awesome. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.